Thank you for coming today. We'll get started. First, just a couple of announcements. Please do, well, I should introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Jett. I'm the vice president here. Before we get started, please make sure to silence your phones if you haven't already. Also wanted to remind those of you who are FCC members to please fill out your membership survey. You have a few more days to do it, and you don't want to miss out on the chance to win some really excellent prizes, including a year's free membership. So be sure to do that and tell all of your friends. And if you're not a member, we are always looking for new people to apply. If you have questions about joining the FCC, if you'd like to come to more events like this, you can talk to me, you can talk to our president, Lee Williamson, you can talk to our new general manager, David Breitling, anyone on the staff. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. Lastly, I just wanted to make sure you're all aware that we have our annual journalism conference coming up on Saturday, May 4th. So please do put that in your calendars. This is the first time we are holding it since 2019. It used to be an annual event that got interrupted by the pandemic, so we're very excited to bring that back. That is Saturday, May 4th. But for today, we're very excited to have FCC member and author Johan Nylander here to talk about his new book, The Wolf Economy, Awakens. Johan is, as I said, an FCC. Yes, thank you. Johan, as I said, is an FCC member, as well as an award-winning author and Asia correspondent. His work has been published by CNN, Forbes, Sweden's leading business daily Dagens Industry, and many other international media outlets. He's the author of 4 books, including the one we're talking about today, The Wolf Economy Awakens. The book is about Mongolia. So to start off, how did you get started on this project? Why Mongolia? What got you interested in it?
Well, it's a good question. You know this old saying, this old joke, like the most difficult question for an author with a new book is, why did you write the book and what is it about? Always the most difficult questions. But no, I think, like, honestly, there's so many fascinating things about this country. Like, it's such a beautiful place. I don't know how many of you have ever been to Mongolia, but it's an extraordinarily beautiful place. Like, very friendly people, like amazing history, a lot of interesting things happening at the moment. But a lot of people in the world, they don't know, like, almost anything about the country. Like, a lot of people don't even know it exists. I don't know how many times I've been here in Hong Kong, and I tell my friends I'm on my way to go to Mongolia, and people say, like, oh, Mongolia, that's in China. Right? Do they speak Chinese in Mongolia? So no, in Mongolia they speak Mongolian. Even some people are confused Mongolia with Angola. So, oh, Mongolia, that's in Africa. No, it's not in Africa. No, so I thought maybe the country needs some more recognition than that. And I was also very curious, very, very fascinated by this thing, how like a small, like a big country, small population, right? Like landlocked between the world's 2 biggest, like, authoritarian giants, with like China on one side and Russia on one side, and it still manages to stand up for democracy and for democratic principles. So I thought that they must be doing something a bit different in Mongolia.
And how did you go about researching the book? You went there, you spent quite a bit of time there.
Yeah.
What was your approach?
I spent a lot of time there. I think also, like, going back to your first question, I think I was also looking for a new adventure in life, right? It's easy that we all, like, write it, like Asia correspondents, we all write the same story, right? So I think it was just looking for a new adventure, something interesting to do. So I started traveling a lot to Mongolia. I've been there many times now, and I spent about 1 year going back and forth after the pandemic, when we could start traveling again, going back and forth regularly, often like a month at a time. And like, I interviewed everybody, like so many people wanted to speak with me, from like leading politicians to business people to just people on the streets. Because again, they are quite sad that there's so many misunderstandings about their country. So they were like eager to tell their stories to me. So it was quite fascinating, how open people were to share their stories.
And what are some of the things we should know about Mongolia's role in the region diplomatically and also economically?
That's a small question.
Yeah, I know.
In terms of diplomacy, if we start there, it's quite fascinating. Like something I wasn't really aware of before I started researching. Like, so Mongolia's got this like unique diplomatic position in the region. Like they have very good diplomatic relationships with Russia and China, like diplomatic and trade relationships. I mean, they don't really have much of an option; it's their only neighbors. But they also have very good diplomatic relationships with the EU, with United States, Japan, South Korea, India, all these democratic countries. And they call these countries their third neighbor. It's like the third neighbor policy. And Mongolia, I don't know if you know this, but often it's called like the Switzerland of Asia, right? So it's a neutral country, and people from all these countries, that might have conflicts with each other, they can meet in Mongolia and discuss. You have this thing called Ulaanbaatar dialogue, for example, where people from all of Northeast Asia and also other parts of the world, they meet and they talk about security, about economic development. And this is quite unique. So you have, for example, North Korea and Japan, they don't have official diplomatic relationships, right? So their foreign ministries can't communicate, right? But they can meet in Mongolia, right? And it happened that lower level diplomats from North Korea and Japan, they meet in Mongolia and actually can solve some problems. And maybe you remember when Kim Jong-un and were meeting with Donald Trump. So Mongolia Ulaanbaatar was one of the places that were shortlisted to host that meeting. In the end, they had the meeting in Singapore. And my friends in Ulaanbaatar say, it's just because Singapore, they got better golf. And then the Economically, yeah, another small topic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a huge issue. I mean, the country's economy is based on mining, right? And so mining is tremendously important for the country, right? And also the kind of mining that is coming from Mongolia is very important for the whole region. I mean, both like oil, coal that is being shipped to countries for production and so on. But also they are very big in copper. And copper is naturally important for green transition, for batteries, for electrical cars and so on. And it is so. I went to the Oyu Tolgoi copper mine, and it is mind-blowing when you visited these mines. So they're like 6 direct flights from Ulaanbaatar down to the Gobi Desert to the mine, like every day, like 6 direct flights, and they're full with people every morning. It's like rush hour to the copper mine. And when you stand in this mine, it's just this moon-like stony landscape. It just never ends. Like the mine is as big as Hong Kong Island, right? As big as Manhattan to size. You can see some of the pictures here later, but the hole, like the open pit hole, is like 1 kilometer deep. It's deep as the North Sea. And when you stand there in this like gigantic space, you realize how important it is for the economy, right? It's some 5-6% of the country's GDP just from this hole in the ground, right? Also how important it is for the green transition in the world that copper can bring. Yeah, that is the big hole in the ground. That is 1 kilometer deep. It's a bit... but you also see like the big scars this is cutting, like the environmental impact, these big scars in the flesh of Mother Nature, right? And how important it is to do mining in a more sustainable, in a better way. And that is what Mongolia is struggling to do now. Not just to dig up the earth and sell it to China, but to do it in a smarter way, to scale up in the value chain, scale up in the production, and then do it in a greener way.
In the book, you talk about the threat of the resource curse. Could you explain a bit about that and what some of the drawbacks of the dependence on mining are?
Yeah, to be dependent on mining on one or a few resources, it's terrible, right? So this expression called the resource curse, right? The more resources you have in some countries, or the paradox of plenty, like the more resources you have, a lot of countries with a lot of resources, economical development is worse, like human rights are worse, democratic levels are worse, like social development are worse. And Mongolia has been flirting with the resource curse for a long time. So you had this mining boom in Mongolia, like some 10, 15 years ago. So it was the world's fastest growing economy. In 1 quarter, the economy grew by 20%. Like it was called Mongolia. Right? But the economy, it goes with the price of copper. It goes with the price of coal, right? So the prices are high, everybody happy. Then the international prices go down, and people are sliding back into poverty, right? And this is what happened during this mining boom, right? It just came to an end, right? And the whole economy just crashed down, right? Had to go to IMF to cap in hand to be bailed out. And that's just because not enough money were reinvested into the future. I mean, we know about these investment funds in Norway, for example. Right? You save money to invest in future generations. Also, you invest in new mega projects. And that is what they're trying to do in Mongolia now, to invest in new mega projects. Right? So they want to diversify the economy. And there are 2 ways you diversify the economy. One is like within mining, one is in other businesses. But within mining, you try to scale up in the value chain with like smelters, for example, like copper and gold washing plants, for example. They are building together with India a refinery, because now they are producing oil, and they're shipping the oil to other countries, and they refine it, and then they import the refined product back, right? So they lose money on this. So instead, they want to refine their own oil and be a net exporter. That's a better business model, and also and do it in a more green, more sustainable way together with other like leading mining companies from other countries. Right?
And then they're also looking to diversify into other sectors as well.
Yes, yeah. Like a lot of people in Mongolia don't necessarily want to work in a coal mine, right? So you see a lot of things happening in other industries. Like so, tourism is a big thing. You can use the countryside, this vast steppe land, for a lot of things. Right? For the tourism, it's beautiful. It's fantastic to go as a tourist. Also, the countryside can be used for filmmaking, right? So if you like when Hollywood want to make these like grand films, right, with horses riding up and down or battlefields, it's a perfect place to do filmmaking. You also have a fantastic like tech startup scene, right? I mean, I've been covering the tech startup scene in like Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Ho Chi Minh City, Seoul, like Berlin, Stockholm, and Ulaanbaatar is one of those places that really like it inspires me. Like so many tech startups and a lot of things happening that I think is worth talking about and mentioning. Right?
Yes, we're going to get more into some of those things. One question I wanted to ask, so Mongolia doesn't really make it into international headlines all that often, but one instance when it did recently was the end of 2022 when there were these mass protests in the square in the middle of the capital related to the coal industry and corruption. Can you tell us a bit about what happened there and how the government addressed it and how the leadership addressed it?
Yeah. Having mass protests in Mongolia is quite common, right? Almost like a weekend fun day out. No, which is great, right? Because it means that people really take the freedom of speech, freedom of criticizing seriously. But what you referred to was a huge scandal. It was called the coal mafia. It was revealed that people in powerful positions, they've been, like to simplify, like stealing coal, selling it to China illegally. I remember like international media. It was quite difficult to explain, but trucks from the coal mines going to the border of China declared empty, but on the Chinese side declared full. Right? But it was more complicated than that. It was like all through the logistics chains. Coal and money was just disappearing for like many years. And I think almost like 200 people has been arrested and under investigation now. And naturally, when people heard about this, like, they are furious, because corruption is a huge problem in Mongolia. Like in many countries in the region, you know, it's plagued by corruption, and people are sick and tired of it. I mean, one example. Over the last 30 years, like since the country became the fall of the Soviet Union, and Mongolia became like a free independent country again, a democratic country, the economy has tenfolded, but the number of people living in poverty is about the same, right? So they have a lot of economical development, but not social development, right? So people think that the rich are just stuff in their pockets. So when this was revealed, I mean, naturally go out, people go to the government square, and they're furious. And it was interesting because it was the government who revealed these things. And the prime minister, who I interviewed several times, these protests, they were never violent, but they were kind of like boiling, almost becoming violent. And he told me in an interview that he got worried that it will like boil over, like we saw here in Hong Kong, like how the protest just escalates too much. So he got worried that they were escalating too much. So he actually went out on the square to talk to people, like face to face. I thought it was quite impressive. You don't see that in many other countries where citizens are like so loudly criticizing the government, and the prime minister actually goes out on the square and tries to speak with the people. But this is an ongoing investigation. I think it will keep on rolling for many years, and a lot of heads will roll. A lot of influential people have been arrested, including a former president under investigation. So that was big news all over the world.
And can you tell us a bit more about the Prime Minister? I think there might be a photo of him in the slideshow somewhere. Just sort of who he is, what his leadership style is, what his vision is for Mongolia.
Yeah, he's all about visions. Right? He's written 2 books. One was he was like in the early 20s. It was his visions about the future of Mongolia. And he launched this, he and his cabinet, they launched this 25-year-old plan called Vision 2050. So he's all about visions, trying to look forward. But no, he's an interesting character. Like, I met him 5 times now. And he comes from like a small mining town, like a small dirty mining town. He grew up he's very young. He was only 40 years old. He's like 10 years younger than I am. And I'm not that old, right? But he comes from this like dirty mining town. And like when he was growing up, like this mining town, some 10,000 people with Mongolian miners, Kazakh miners, Russian prisoners, you know, sent to hard labor, working in a rough environment. But that's where he grew up. And from being a teenager in his 20s, was like a grassroots activist, you know, fighting for social justice, fighting against corruption. And it's interesting, you mentioned these protests in the Sukbatar Square in Ulaanbaatar. Actually, he rose to fame being the one leading these mass demonstrations. So he was standing there pointing finger at the government. I remember when I met him the first time, my first question to him was, how does it feel being the one leading the masses, pointing finger and criticizing the government, and now people are standing there pointing finger at you, criticizing you? And he said, like, those people, those are the best people. They are standing up for what I also believe in, you know, fighting for social development, fighting for democracy, fighting for a better future. They are my best advocates, the people criticizing me. So I think that tells you something about his leadership style.
You talk in the book about some of the other people in government working with him, young people who were maybe educated in the West, had lucrative careers in finance, and now they've moved back to Mongolia to work in the government or work at tech startups. What motivates them, and why do they feel so positive about Mongolia at a time when not as many positive things or feelings can be seen in a lot of other countries in this part of the world?
It's a very good question. I don't know if they see so positive on Mongolia. It's more like they feel like I have to do something to improve the country, right? But no, like I met so many people who had international careers, they studied abroad, like making good money, easier lives. So a lot of people from Mongolia, because it's been quite rough, especially after the mining boom. Like a lot of people, they tried their luck in other countries, right? And a lot of them, they're moving back now to Mongolia. And I met so many people who was doing this. And I mean, you have this thing in China also, you know, the so-called sea turtles, right? Who maybe worked in Silicon Valley and now they return to Shenzhen or to Shanghai to join the tech startup sector. But I think for the people in Mongolia, they absolutely don't do it because of the money, because they had very lucrative careers abroad. And then they come back. Some they join the government. So a lot of the younger people who works with the prime minister, like he called them the young tigers. Right? They are sharpening their teeth for that tomorrow they will be the ministers and they will run the country later. Also, a lot of people join the tech startups, or they go back to do tech startups, right? Or to do all kinds of business. And it's hard to explain why. It's like one of the high-ranking politicians I spoke to. His name is Nagy. When I interviewed him the first time, he was vice minister of mining. Now he's one of the top spokesperson for the ruling party. And he had studied at Harvard. Harvard started business. He was working for Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, like a high-flying Wall Street banker, right? And he turned his back on Wall Street to move back to Mongolia. I remember asking him, like when you left Wall Street to go and join the government, like did that mean a pay cut? And he said, "Oh God, yes." He said, "If I did it for the money, I would never do it." Right? But he spoke a lot about like what is your purpose in life? What is meaningful in life? Right? And I met this other woman who actually she lives with her husband and son in the United States. And I met her when she was in Mongolia, like visiting friends. And she said she had like a hole in her heart. She said that it felt painful living in America and not being back in Mongolia and contribute to a better society. So it's like something in here that makes people want to come back, and not because things are great there, maybe because they are not great, but together we can fight for a better future. And I thought that was, quite honorable.
A lot of these young people working for the government have backgrounds in tech. They're extremely well educated. What are some examples of innovations that they've introduced in Mongolia that might surprise people?
When I speak to people in the government, when they are abroad, and they explain the accomplishments in say, technology, one of the things that I often hear is this app. Sounds really boring, like everybody hates apps. This app called e-Mongolia. And it's all government services, in one app, right? If you want to get a new passport, get a new driving license, set up a company, your tax returns, book a hospital appointment, it's all in one single app. I mean, I never heard, in Sweden, we don't have that. Has anyone heard of, wouldn't that be great? Like everything in one app? And they say when they go abroad and they explain this, like actually people from even developing countries, comes up afterward and say like, maybe you can give us some advice how we can also do this, right? And this app it's very convenient for people in the cities, but it's even more important for people on the countryside, like these herders who live, maybe 1 or 2 days from the nearest town. Like instead of having to go to this town to do governmental services, they can just sit on their horse, on their camel, and on their smartphone, and trade crypto and do their government services. So that's pretty cool, actually, I must say. That's one example.
You also talk about the green transition and a project involving carbon credits that also involves nomads. Can you tell us a bit about that and what that's about?
Yeah, there's also a very good story. It's this green technology startup called Eureka. And I think like tech startups are the best when they can solve a local problem that also can solve like a global problem. So if you go to Ulaanbaatar in the winter, it's among the world's most polluted cities because it gets very cold. It's like down to -40. And large part of the town, especially the poorest part of the town, they don't have any central heating. The poorest part of the town is called like the Gur district or the yurt district because you see the yurts, like the tents. They set up these tents. It's like almost 500,000 people who live in these tents. And wintertime they burn coal. They burn coal for indoor heating and to warm up water, right? And nighttime the whole sky just turns into this like fog. It's really hard to breathe. It's like you walk out your hotel, it's like someone kicks you in the chest. It's just unbearable almost. And this is Eureka, this picture. So what they do, they are helping these families to change from burning coal to solar panels, right? But that's quite expensive, so a normal family, they can't afford this. So to make it affordable, they also connect these families with a carbon credit system. So they have this like machine that can monitor this machine learning machine. I don't really understand the technology. This AI product that monitors like how much CO2 are we cutting and how much green electricity are we creating, and then the family gets this money. So the family they make money. They can make between $5,000 and $10,000 a year, and that's almost the equivalent of one person's minimum wage. So it's almost like one more person working for the family, and for poor families that's enormous. And I visited some of these families who were it was still a pilot project when I was there, and they were so happy, not because of the money they made. Like this woman told me that the greatest thing with having the solar panels was that they didn't have to argue in the morning whose turn is it to fire up the heater to start burning coal. You don't have to get your hands black every day. You don't need to have black under your nails every day. And one mother said the greatest thing for her is that her daughter, now she can run around in the tent. Before she always had to be worried because a lot of children, they run around and they trip and they fall in the land on the heater, right, on the stove, right? So a lot of children, a lot of people in Mongolia have these like burn marks on their face because they fell on it. Now it's just an element that you can touch, and so like life just became better. And I think anyone can also sign up for this app, this Eureka app, and do carbon credit trading and like help these families. I thought that was also like a brilliant local tech startup. I never heard of anything similar to this in other countries.
And one thing that struck me in the book is you mentioned Mongolia could potentially produce enough renewable energy to supply all of Northeast Asia. Is that right?
Yeah. According to Asia Development Bank, they've done these calculations that the Gobi Desert, so Mongolia is called like the nation of the endless blue sky. Right? It's like 250 days of blue sky, and it's also very windy. The Gobi Desert, very windy. So they have capacity to create wind and solar energy if you have these super grids and the right technology to power all of Northeast Asia, like so Korea, China, Japan, Mongolia, parts of Russia. That's quite impressive, but you need the right investments. right investments and right politics to make that work. But there are a lot of, like the SoftBank in America, in America, they've been investing a lot in Mongolia to make these super grids, to use energy, produce energy from Mongolia and spread it to all across the region.
I have more questions. We haven't even gotten to your favorite chapter yet, but I want to make sure that we have time for questions from the audience, so maybe we can take a few of those. And yes, starting right here.
Do we still have to state our name and affiliation, or has that changed under
Up
the
to
new
you.
laws?
Up to you.
Tony Watson, Far East Investment Management. Two questions regarding, I guess, ethnicity and migration. One, could you talk a little bit about the Korean influence in Mongolia? Last time I was there in November, there was just Korean businesses everywhere, whether it's noodle shops or coffee shops or, K-pop was everywhere. Is that related to, and also they're big investors and even small and medium businesses. Is that related to the ethnic Korean minority that was already there, or just how does that come about? What's the attraction? The second one, more of a niche-y kind of question. I understand there's a big Mongolian minority in Russia around the Lake Baikal. I think that's the pronunciation. Given the situation in Russia now, particularly their recruitment of soldiers from more rural places like that, are you seeing a lot of migration of those ethnic Mongolians down into Mongolia? And what is their situation and how compatible are they?
Oh, great questions. Yeah, like Korea is everywhere. Like people often say that Mongolia is like becoming more and more westernized. I wouldn't agree on that. It's becoming more and more like Koreanized, right? Or like the influence from Korea and Japan, it's especially Korea, like the beauty shops, like products, like restaurants everywhere. Like you almost find more Korean restaurants in downtown Ulaanbaatar than you find like local Mongolian restaurants. And also people, like a lot of my friends in Mongolia, they speak Korean. And a lot of Korean people, a lot of Mongolian people, they go to Korea to work. Right? So you have a lot of both culture and business relationship. A lot of people, they go back and forth. Also from North Korea, actually. Like there used to be quite a few North Korean, because people from North Korea, they go visa-free to Mongolia. So there used to be quite a few North Korean restaurants in Ulaanbaatar. I think they all closed down during the pandemic, but I'm sure they're coming back soon again. And naturally, the diplomatic relationships between South Korea, also North Korea and Mongolia is quite tight. A lot of investments, a lot of like mega investments, like infrastructure investments coming from Korea.
Really seems to have kicked up in the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years. Like pre-pandemic, when I went to Mongolia, I never noticed such a big on-the-ground presence of Korean businesses, but now it really seems to have amped up several orders of magnitude. Do you have any insights on what's caused it to kick up in the last few years?
No, I don't know. I don't know how it was like 5, 6 years ago, but that Korea's got a huge presence. That's I don't know why that's happening. Right? Maybe it's the tipping point. Yeah. I think next question. Right? Yeah, I remember. Right? So it's a bit sad, right? So like the Mongolian population is like split into 3 different parts. You have like Inner Mongolia in China, right? And then you have Mongolia, and then this part of Russia that also is with Mongolian people. And when I speak to my friends in Mongolia, I remember once I was standing this huge Genghis Khan statue, right? You can walk up on it. It's like 50 meters high or something, and this kind of a museum at the foot is a museum, and that is map of the Mongolian Empire. Where they controlled like 25% of the world's population. And I asked my friend, like, how do you feel when you look at this? Right? Did you feel sad that you don't have the empire anymore? And I said, like, I don't care about the land, but I feel sad that like our people have been cut up in different countries, right? If ethnical Mongolian people are leaving Russia, again, people from Russia, they go visa-free to Mongolia. I don't know if you have a lot of ethnical Mongolian people going to Mongolia, but I did see a lot of Russians, like about a year ago when Putin said it's like partial subscription, like everybody has to go to the war, like southern Ulaanbaatar was full of Russians wanting to leave, and like a lot of people like hugging and saying farewell because they were moving on. And I met a lot of musicians, like this. I met this Russian musician in a jazz club. And he was playing music, and he said it was heartbreaking to leave his motherland, but he didn't want to go to Ukraine to kill or to be killed. But as long as I'm with my guitar, I'm always home. And so there's a lot of like quite emotional meetings with Russians in Mongolia. Yeah. Also, like Russia has a big influence in Mongolia still in terms of culture and so on.
Other questions in the corner there?
Hi. Yes, so thanks for the interesting talk. I know absolutely nothing about Mongolia, slightly more now in the past half an hour, but the Russian prisoner of wars that you were talking about that work in the mines, that's still going on, and what's the dynamic there? It struck me as quite interesting.
Oh, no, it's not going on anymore. That was during the Soviet era.
Okay.
Yeah, so Mongolia was a Soviet satellite state, right? It was under the thumb of Moscow, right? So Russia was running the place, you can say.
And how big, maybe if you can talk a little bit more about the Russian influence and the political ties there, also economically, and I guess, both active in mining. How do you see that developing? And it's interesting that you said it's kind of like a Switzerland of Asia, right? Because it has so many, it has economic relations with Europe, but also obviously Russia, and arguably maybe the Russian and the Chinese ones are more important for its survival, right? So how does it work that one out?
Yeah, so, Russia was the dominant influencer of Mongolia for almost 100 years. Right? The writing in Mongolia is Cyrillic. Right? A lot of the architecture in Ulaanbaatar is like Russian style architecture. A lot of the food. People still learn to speak Russian in schools, like everybody speaks Russian. And Russia and Mongolia, they have a very close relationship. Right? And in terms of they import all the energy from Russia, they export mainly to China. And people have from West, at the moment, it's like everybody hates Russia, right? But from Mongolian perspective, that is not the case. They know Russia from also its good sides, right? They're closer to Russian culture. They can follow Russia, read Russian poetry. Listen, they have a lot of culture exchange. A lot of the leaders in the country, they were educated in Russia, right? So it is easy to point finger of the old and new generation, like the democratic generation and the Soviet generation, but also important to remember that the current leaders of the country often were educated in Moscow or in Eastern Europe. So they do have strong connection with Russia, but still, business people and politicians they are also say it's important to lower the dependency on Russia, right? Especially in terms of energy.
We had a question there.
Oh, thank you. Like you, I'm fortunate to be totally addicted to Mongolia. I've been going for over 15 years. And many years ago, a friend up there said, and this was kind of in the beginning of Oyo Tolgoi and the mining boom, he said, this country is either going to be the new Norway or the new Nigeria. So, given where you sit now, which side would you put your money on?
I hope. Well, I'm from Sweden, so Norway is a bit touchy topic, right? No, I think no. They were really flirting with falling into the resource trap, right? And I think they made a lot of mistakes during the mining boom, But I also hope that they learned a lot of lessons, like the people who work for the mining ministry, the people who work for Oya Tolgoi, the people who work for the government companies that are the owners. They said, like, we made a lot of mistakes, and we have learned our lessons. And now we're trying to turn the page, like look at the future. And it's not easy. Like it's tremendously complicated in a country that is like lacking resource, like financial resources, right? You need to collaborate with international companies. So the Oya Tolgoi mine is ranked as like top of the art in terms of technology. They collaborate with, say, Sweden, Swiss ABB, like for the power transmitters and robotization. Denmark's FL Smith, for example, is among the most modern mines in the world. Right? A lot of the other mines in the country are not of the same standards, right? But I hope when there's tremendous amount of riches underground. Like most of the country are, like there's so much copper that you can make like 10 more Oya Tolgoi. If they do it in the Norwegian way, it will be great. If they don't, I think they will be stuck in poverty forever. Right? It's like they need to make a decision. Right? They're going to be a rich future, an equal future, lift people, spread the wealth, not just dig up the earth and sell it to China, but to do it in a more clever way. And it's easy for me to sit here and say that, but I think they do have the chance, and people I speak with, they are determined that like this time we need to get it right. And so, yeah.
I think we had a question over here.
Yes. Hi, my name is Ulf Orling. I'm a business consultant and lawyer from Sweden too. I finished reading Johan's book maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. And after having spent some 20 years in Asia, Mongolia was a white spot on the map for me. And the book was a real eye-opener. I recommend everyone to read it. It was so interesting to read about Mongolia and all the background, the Genghis Khans and everything. It really, it amazed me how good it was to read about it. So interesting. So please, everyone, read Johan's book. And now to my question.
No, continue.
Maybe you could buy me a beer afterwards. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Now my question. If you given the chance, would you take your family and live in Mongolia for, say, 5 years? Would that be interesting to you, or would it be possible, or have you had enough of Mongolia?
No, I would. No, I could see myself living there. Like Ulaanbaatar is a really cool place. I'm a city boy. I love cities. Right? That's why I love Hong Kong. But Ulaanbaatar, especially downtown Ulaanbaatar, like I've said, a lot of Korean influence, a lot of international influence. I think if you were there maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was not the case. But now it's just, skyscrapers, not as tall as in Hong Kong, like international jazz clubs, nightclubs, like restaurants from all over the world, like people speak good English, and naturally with the Mongolian, the nomadic traditions. It's a good blend, right? I really like Ulaanbaatar. It's an interesting business community. There's like hardworking, creative people, like fighting to do something, like a better future. It's inspiring. It's an inspiring environment to live in, which I think is very important. Like especially if you have kids, growing up where people are struggling for a better tomorrow. Then also, as soon as you leave Ulaanbaatar, just you take the car for like an hour or 2 hours, you're outside on the countryside. You're out in the steppe lands quickly, and it's just open landscape. And it doesn't take long until you like see horses running wild, like yaks and cows and goats, and like there are no barns, there are no fences. Like all the animals just run free. Right? You can, if you have a jeep, you can like drive up to a nomadic family, to these yurts, right? and you can stay the night. Like it's very very welcoming. It's amazing to be on the countryside in Mongolia, right? And also to live in Ulaanbaatar. I could see myself living there. I was flirting with the idea when I was traveling there the most. Yeah.
I think, gosh, so many questions. Let's go to Lee, and I think then Justus will have to, and then we'll have to end it there.
Johan, hi. Really fascinating talk. I'm sat next to your wonderful wife, Hannah, and I can tell you from her response, you're definitely not moving to Mongolia anytime soon. So I should break that news. Jennifer mentioned that you didn't have time to talk about your favorite chapter. I had a chance, and we had a chance at this table to hear you talk a little bit about it. It was a treat. So can you share with the room a little bit about your favorite chapter of the book and why? Thanks.
My favorite chapter is the last chapter, right? So the last chapter it's 4 chapters in the book. Like one is about never mind. The last chapter is about the countryside, like what's happening in the countryside is when I'm traveling on the countryside. Also how you see like digitalization reaching the nomads, like how lifestyle brands, cosmetic brands, fashion brands are collaborating with the nomads. And I think I enjoyed this chapter because it was so important for me to write it, because I spend most of my time in Ulaanbaatar, right? Interviewing people, running for meetings, right? But the most important part for me to understand the country and the identity of the people is when you leave the capital. Right? So I spent time with this nomadic family, and it's a bit hard to explain. Like what happens to you? You meet this family, and they invite you in, and we had a big feast in the evening, drinking vodka. This like bowl that is passed around the tent, and it's very impolite not to. So I did my best to. Right? And we were like there were no mobile phone connection where we were, and I remember the father in the family. He was telling stories, from when he was a kid, when he was growing up, and everybody sitting there. Like there were no distractions from mobile phones or notifications. Everybody just sitting there, and someone you're kind of nodding off, and the vodka was passed around, and it kind of reminded me when I was a kid, and my grandfather used to tell stories, right? And it was fantastic. And I remember the next morning when I woke up, right, and a bit of a headache from the vodka, but you see it's like the endless blue sky, and you see this like big landscape, and there were like 100 gazelles, like just walking past, just slowly walking past, and I was standing there like, oh my God, like where am I? It's like a fantastic experience. But then the key to this chapter is like you have this nomadic culture, but how digitalization, like this Mongolia app that we talked about, for example, are getting more influential into the lives of the nomadic herders. And sometimes technology can stand in the way of, say, a good life. We are overwhelmed by these mobile phones. But for them, it can also help them to maintain their nomadic traditions with the help of technology. Right? So, yeah, I like that chapter. Yeah, and that experience. Right? It moved me in a way, I must say.
I will take one last question. Oh, yeah.
I would have a question about Genghis Khan. You mentioned him earlier, and I think most people who are not Mongolians, when they hear Genghis Khan, they probably think murder and mayhem, bloodshed, wrath of God, that sort of thing. But it seems that's quite different in Mongolia. What's up with Genghis Khan in Mongolia?
Yeah, I mean, Genghis Khan is everywhere. Like he's very influential. I mean, some people say it's almost a problem. Like we have one celebrity, and he died 800 years ago. But no, like he's everywhere, and he's very. So I think history is taught different in different countries. Like in some countries, he's just a ruthless warlord, right? But in Mongolia, he's seen as in quite different eyes. So he created this huge empire, right? And it was with like ruthless warriors, right? But also with clever technology and diplomacy. Right? So so Genghis Khan and his sons and grandsons with their diplomatic efforts, right? They made the Silk Roads safe. Right? They said like a maiden with gold in her hair, she could like walk safely through the whole of the realm without being robbed. And Genghis Khan, he introduced like modern diplomacy. So in the old days, the way to declare war on another country is that you take the ambassador, you cut his head off, and send it as a declaration of war. But he said like no, all the diplomats, they should be kept safe. Like even if we have war, even if conflicts, we still should have open communications. And no, so he's seen as, it's a bit complicated description of him because people see him with different eyes from different countries. But I don't go into depth about him, but in the chapter about Asia Mongolia being the Switzerland of Asia, I write quite a lot about Genghis Khan and his contribution to modern diplomacy, which I think is very fascinating. And I didn't know much about that before I started traveling there. So yeah, that's also like a great contribution from the Mongol Empire, modern diplomacy. Yeah.
Well, this has been so fascinating. Unfortunately, we have to end it there, but thank you so much for coming. We have a gift for you, and also there are piles of the book over there available for sale. Please do pick one up on the way out, and we have the author here to sign it as well. Thank you all for coming, and see you again soon. Have a great day.